Hello, little creatures. Welcome to Lugal's world. We have a very special guest that is involved with a lot of anthroposophical schools of thought and groups. And he is the first anthroposophist that I know that we were able to talk about initiation, having been initiated, having crossed the threshold. His name is Bill Trusiewicz, Polish. And so, yeah, part of why I wanted to bring this together is because as we move back into the spirit realm, to move out of the Kali Yuga, the Dark Ages, more and more it will be brought to people's attention the reality of spiritual realms, with or without their permission. There is a global awakening happening, and every single day, people are dying and becoming aware of the Bardos, the eighth sphere, the underworld. And so I'm sharing this so that you would be equipped. You would be a little more aware, a little more conscientious. Because I think the dangers of not knowing about these things far outweigh the dangers of being ignorant of these things. Because it's like being thrown into the ocean unprepared versus having a boat, versus having a map. So I think just because you don't know about the ocean doesn't make you safe from it, right? And so there's a level of preparation I'd like to bring to the esoteric speakers, because Bill, the people that are watching are mostly, these are not normal people. These are not, this isn't Sally from the grocery store, right? These are people that have probably had some kind of awakening, but they're too afraid to talk about it, or they felt shamed because of it. They felt isolated from it. The people watching are interested in discovering the harsh things of the spirit realm and looking for some kind of redemption, some kind of hope, because they have faced the hardest things imaginable in their life. And they're looking for answers. They're looking for a way to build into this into the future of where we're all going. They're looking to help build the new earth and help stay away from the warnings of what so the people that are brought here are definitely wanting to cultivate themselves and move towards this beautiful future that Steiner has laid out for us on some level. Yeah.
So, do I have a moment to get a little glass of water?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay,
I have an editor, so she'll edit this video.
Okay, good. Okay. So. Okay. I'm here.
Also wanted to say I just changed my about me on YouTube, and the thing that I changed is I put the quote from the Tao Te Ching that says, it talks about nourish the darkness inside of you and you will become whole.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. So we
I
back.
listen to the Tao Te Ching about 8 hours every single night when I sleep on loop. I've been doing this for months, and it's been soaking into my.
Okay. Well, I keep the book beside my bed, and I'm not sure whether that's good as what you're doing. So are we on now?
Yes, we are. And for my editor, please cut out the yeah, so a little bit after I'm done speaking right now, cut out like here and then all the way to when I did the introduction. So thank you, Barbara. That's her name. So we'll continue.
Okay, so now I asked if you would give a question for me so that I could be on focus, and we should probably do that again to be sure that I am on focus and that you're getting what you would like. And I could but let me say first in response to your introduction, it was your description of this, your listenership or your people who are watching was very moving, actually. You're seeing something I feel is extremely important, and a beautiful way of recognizing those who are unrecognized, you might say. And it's truly a movement that is happening very slowly and gently, and but extremely powerfully. And I just wanted to change something that you said, or give an alternative to something you said, not to contradict it, but to bring it to another level. So you said this isn't the, I don't remember the name you said, the Jane at the grocery store. And because you wanted to emphasize that the extraordinary nature of these people who are listening.
Well, yeah, well, it's the Jane who's interested in she goes to the grocery store, but she's interested in the occult. I meant to say we don't have to be worried about that some normie's going to come on here. Like the algorithm would not let someone who's not interested, because many anthroposophists are afraid of, oh, well, you're awakening people too quickly. You're awakening the fundamentalists too quickly. Well, the algorithm's not going to present to them this material. The algorithm, their frequency is not going to match with this. They're good. They're safe. They're chill. So
that's good. Yeah, but what I wanted to, what I was leading up to was to say that actually it is the Jane at the grocery store and I recognize this when I go places, that there's depths that, sometimes you can tell in a glance or in a few words, but it's not always the time to open up a big discussion. But I feel it and see it around me at that level. So anyway, so go ahead with your question.
And that's brilliant. I appreciate that. My question is, first I would really love you to talk about your abilities, because I've heard people talk about the 6 essential exercises. I've heard people talk about the different things with anthroposophy, but very seldom have I ever heard about anyone actually cultivating the abilities and whatnot. And for good, they shy away from this, but I'm curious about your abilities and what you've cultivated through your different practices, and what you're now able to see, to do, to experience when it comes to this the other realms. So
well, I generally shy away from talking about my own experiences, but I realize because and there's a reason. This is also the reason to talk about them, because they don't. They're so different. Everyone experiences and learns things in different ways, and I have been able to develop certain capacities, and I'm not really. I can describe how they came to me, but I can't tell you exactly why. I can theorize about it. I had a life-changing experience at sometime between 12 and 14 years old. I can't determine exactly when. I didn't write it down. I didn't understand at the time what was going on. But so I had a threshold experience, and I came back from that with the ability that I didn't understand for a very long time, but that I realized I would never live on the surface of life again. I saw very clearly in this confrontation with the guardian of the threshold that I did not have the capacity to experience. It is a contradiction. What I just experienced, I was given by grace. I was giving a particular experience, and crossing the threshold back into my normal life. The guardian of the threshold let me know that it was a gift of grace, and that I didn't actually have the capacity in my, I don't know what you'd call it, my nature up until that point in life, to have the kind of consciousness experience that I had of the cosmos. So, so I've had clairvoyant capacities since that time. But it's also very interesting to note that when one has clairvoyance, one doesn't really know it or understand it oftentimes. I think we compare ourselves to others and tend to assume that others are like us, and that may not be the case, and it probably isn't. So, I think the experience I had, which I imagine eventually I will speak of, presented a lot of challenges for me in fitting in the world, and the things you said about the folks that are listening here resonate very dearly with me. Feeling rejected or not fitting in and that sort of thing was certainly a theme in my life, especially since I had that experience. A kind of sense of loneliness, and so yeah.
I think that's what's so magical about what many are creating and what I'm creating at Lugal's World, is that with this community in the Discord, is that I've created, we can get together, we can talk about our experiences, we can connect over these things, and we're burning away some of the coldness that the isolation is happening in the world. I think that these spiritual matters are the things, just as the pneuma, the spirit, unifies all of the different separate parts of our body into a cohesive singular being. So as it is with that, it is happening with the things of the spirit. And I think we should reach out. If people are lonely, reach out to spiritual groups, reach out to this community, become a member, make some friends, because I think that you'll be surprised by the lack of rejection you find. Open your heart, because a lot of people have been isolated by this stuff. You don't know how many people have had a very similar experience to you,
Exactly.
right? I during my initiation, I felt I was the worst person in the entire world. I felt I was, and I wanted to literally die and take my life, because I felt I was just the worst thing ever in existence. And as I learned that this is a common experience in initiation or something similar to this, it took a lot of the shame and a lot of the sting out of it. And
Yeah.
that's, I think, also why people don't want to talk about it, because they'll be labeled as crazy. The more that we talk about this, the more that we can bring an intelligence. When light is brought to something, it also brings an intelligence. When there's a lack of intelligence around something, we like to call people crazy, put them in institutions. But for thousands of years, we've had the intelligence to make the initiation process full of intelligence, full of actually understanding what's happening to the person. And I think as science and as spirituality and as all of these things increase in intelligence, we're going to see that no one is crazy. Now, they may be in other realms. Their consciousness may not be focused. They might not have developed the I am or the will to move through the different timelines and the different dimensions that they've found themselves caught up in, or the different entities inside of themselves that have diverted themselves away from focus and the experience that we're all kind of collectively agreeing on here. But they're definitely not crazy. They're definitely experiencing something, for sure.
Yeah.
And I was so inspired by this idea. I found this tarot deck called Madhouse Tarot. And it's all about, it takes place in the setting of like an institution in like the 1920s. It's pretty phenomenal. I want to read what the introduction is. And that's where I experienced my awakening, was in um, an institution. It was incredibly powerful, because we think of the people there as we might devalue them or something. But in ancient times, some of these people, these would be like the oracles. And some of these people, and tremendously, they would channel, when I was in there, they would channel the different components of my psyche perfectly, or the different entities that were connected to me. They were able to fully be permanent fixtures of the awakened world, because they're in between. It's quite phenomenal, the guidance that I was given in there. And I was seeing 50% in the spirit realm and 50% in this world. I'm going to pull up what the introduction to the book was, his guidebook here. And if you want to buy his tarot deck, you can you can go to Etsy, and type in, Madhouse Tarot. It's by Eugene Vitinsky from Switzerland. So it says, "Are you nuts? Have you lost your mind? I totally have a screw loose. He's batshit crazy. You haven't said or heard these words hundreds of times? It takes a little to hear them. Just raise your voice. Break a cup. After all, the bomb was created by a regular person. Some other guy gave the order to detonate it. Someone obeyed the order and dropped it on a city. There is a blurred boundary between us and them. Many of us have accidentally crossed into it more than once. Some teeter on it every day, like a tightrope walker, but they are still teetering. They are still us, and we know that there is a threshold beyond which we can become them. Someone was not lucky enough to return at the right time. Someone crossed the border with a confident step when it became unbearably lonely and crowded in 4 dimensions. The 5th dimension came into the fore. The point of no return is very close. Just a couple of steps. There is no going back. Psychiatrists have a joke. They who put on the white coat on first is the doctor. And if you've been discharged from a madhouse, this does not mean that you are healthy. It just means that you've become the same as everyone. Only yesterday you were Napoleon. Laughter, heart-wrenching screams, ominous silence, dying eyes, shiftly look onto your face, rampage, nothing new, real life. People often say he has megalomania, persecution mania, obsession. We easily stigmatize people, being only limited by our erudition, Will our stigma ever become a mental diagnosis? This question is whether society is ready to accept this form of behavior. After all, such a person can remain a little despot among their own kind, devouring his family and friends. But they may also want to rise to a higher level and lead a whole army of psychoses. It is a good thing if this happens within the walls of an asylum, not on a national level. Everything is just like in real life within the walls of the madhouse. Only the great teachers and invaluable geniuses and mothers of the world, emperors and other madmen are left to stew in the unhealthy mix of their fantasies, illusions, and hallucinations. This house is a special place. It is the madhouse, both purgatory and hell. The most fragile and most aggressive souls end up here. This is what surrounds us every day. Everything is ghostly and very real here. Welcome to the madhouse, so to speak. Many of us will see something very familiar in its characteristics. So, and he got a journal from someone who was in a madhouse or asylum in the 20s, and he got inspired with this to make this tarot deck from the writing there. What I saw when I was there was the most literal hell-like experience I could have possibly imagined. Just all, it was like Dante's Inferno. I had all of these different trials, all of these, this lady, she'd write down all of your sins, and then you had the fear of that they were going to do it to you the next day. You had to write down everything. It was like communist interrogation. What do you think you did? And it was like, and then and there was a judge. It was so phenomenal. I'm speaking about it with joy now because how amazing it is. But when you're actually doing, it's so horrible. You can't even begin to even imagine how horrible these things are. But it paints the world that we live in such a beautiful light. If you've been to hell, you can truly appreciate all of the blessings that we have in Middle Earth, in the middle plane. You can truly appreciate
Absolutely.
what the Garden of Eden is once you've left.
Yeah. So interesting that you say that. One of the inspirational thoughts that I came to the other day, yesterday was how to experience life in its fullness. I have this question all the time. There's I speak of the Christ in the etheric, the appearance of Christ in the etheric, and this is one terminology of waking up. And so I always have this question about it. How do I do that? And what makes it work? How do I become conscious of it, and so on. So yesterday, it just came so clearly to me. The best way to experience that is to experience something deathly and absolutely horrible. It just moves your assemblage point. It helps you to get the right perspective on things. It's what you're saying is so true, and to confront the death that approaches us during life is the best way to really be awake and be aware of life itself.
I have a question for you. Do you think reverence comes from horror, or reverence comes from severely terrible experiences? From a knowledge of that, or
That's a good, interesting question. Well, it certainly can come from that. It's like fear. If you experience something fearful, your tendency, your instinct is to pull inside to find comfort, or to find I guess you could call it protection. But essentially, you find if you do that, is a place within us of I would call it one way to characterize it is a place of silence and of stillness, and it's the beginning of the possibilities that lie for us ahead, and for us to imagine and to create. And if we can get into the still point, that's why meditation is so important. And like you say, devotion, which is a form of meditation. If we are horrified or fearful, it certainly can drive us to those places. It also can drive us off the cliff, It can literally, destroy us. So, but it does give us that opportunity to open the door, and to enter into the light and to be a creator oneself.
In my own experience of leaving hell, and I fell from heaven. Before I went to hell, I had actually the most beautiful, most blissful experience of the Trinity. I saw triangles everywhere, like Pythagoras, before I even went to the underworld, right before it. So I was like Icarus. I flew too close to the sun. And then I fell into the deepest, darkest abyss I've ever fell into in my entire life. And that's where I experienced in there the true reverence more than anything. I was able to take from hell the greatest reverence for the mother, and especially for the mother that I've ever seen, because I had known the reverence of the father being from this patriarchal point of time and place, but I had not gained a reverence for the powers and the life of the mother. That became apparent as I saw her many various forms. I saw her in the Virgin Mary. I saw her in the spider, the great spider. I saw her in the air. I saw her as the fertility goddess. I saw her as Lilith. I saw her as Kali. I saw her as a spouse. I saw her as my greatest enemy. I saw her as Judas. When I got down to one of the deepest depths of hell, she said to me, my anima said to me, "I'm Judas. I'm the one who put you in here." So in all of that, I got to love her various faces, her various masks and forms, both the grandest form where I'm a speck of dust floating in the air, and where I am married to her.
Oh, that's beautiful. That gives me some insight. I have this picture we talked about briefly earlier in our conversation about Anubis, how Anubis is the mask that Hermes, the great initiate, wears in the initiation rites, and Anubis is the jackal, or a dog-like, wolf-like animal that the initiator has as his face, that we have to deal with first. So you described the mother as having these faces like that, these masks that she wears. And so that's an initiation into, like you said, into the divine feminine side, I guess. You said your appreciation for turn that off. Your appreciation for not just the father, but the mother. So it fits perfectly, and really helps my understanding to see that that these are just masks that the mother wears. Yeah, it's good.
Let me ask you about, what do you do? Say there's someone watching right now. There's a lot of people. I went through this for a while. Thankfully, I don't really struggle, as far as I know, with religious paranoia.
Right.
I've kind of integrated that. I had to, after my awakening, I got afraid of the higher states that I was seeing. So that's why I kind of retreated into fundamentalism for a few months. But what's your view on somebody right now who has the doom imprint of being terrified of hell and kind of the religious programming, a lot of the religious programming? Uh, and that's specifically, I talked to another anthroposophist. It's specifically why they didn't want to talk about initiation, is because they were concerned for these type of people. So I want to know, what would you console or help them leave this kind of place of fundamentalist torment that they have on a conscious or unconscious level? How do they remove themselves from this, and what's some consolation or wisdom you would give to such a person watching this?
Yeah. So yeah, I can maybe in a certain way you could say I could speak with some authority on this because I spent a number of years in fundamentalist Christian groups in the beginning of my journey. And yes, I understand what that fear is. And I experienced it myself, and I mostly saw other people experiencing it because I was able to move on beyond that. But I think the consolation we have is to really learn to know the Christ within and not all the other voices that claim to be the Christ or claim to have the truth. And if we're relying on others to help us for us to know what's right and wrong, we won't ever have security. We won't have inner security, and we won't have real guidance. There's a some scripture references that I like to allude to, where Jesus talks about the little flock, and he talks about the flock and the fold. He describes these two. This religious experience is something. The fundamentalist experience is the fold. So the fold is a place where the sheep are held, and they have fences around them. And what Jesus says is there's the they those who become part of the flock, who go out into the wilds and into the mountains and actually have to confront the lions, and the bears and so on. They're the ones that get to know the master's voice. They're the one to get to know the shepherd personally. So there is an experience of Christ, a personal experience of Christ has to be an individual experience. It can't be a group experience. So he was encouraging people to go out from the fold and be part of the flock. And those who are in the flock are able to, through experience, learn to know the voice of the shepherd. They learn to trust in the protection of the shepherd. They learn to know and tell where the shepherd is leading them. They learn to know where the food is, where the pastures are. All that really happens that can build up one's inner relationship to Christ, will free one from all the fears that those within the fold inadvertently tie themselves to. So that would be my recommendation, is that let yourself be led individually, and you won't be disappointed, because this master and this teacher is faithful.
What is the do you have what's the most beautiful thing you've seen in your initiation?
Well, that's a good question. Um, it's hard to say though what's the most beautiful. You know, I have trouble with placing one thing above another. You know, I don't have favorites generally.
That's a good thing.
I don't have favorites. It seems like every experience can be a peak experience only if you don't have favorites. You know, if you're comparing it to another experience, it's going to be probably less, 99% of the time. So, uh, so the most beautiful, I'd say, let me just talk about the beautiful. It was beautiful to discover the silence at the center of my being. And it only appeared as it did with you, you know, when the Anubis was screaming at me and accusing me of everything in the book. And it was like an experience of literally having a wolf in my face who could speak English and telling me all the things that were wrong with me. And it was a screaming, growling kind of a voice. So, so in a moment, or hard to put these things into time frames, but as a result of that, hearing those things, which were absolutely correct, all of those accusations were describing my state, you might say, or part of my nature that I couldn't deny. There was this beautiful open, just this beautiful silence that came, and out of that silence, something was able to, I was able to speak, and it's like a child who speaks their first words. You know, I was speaking now as a newborn child. It was very tentative and tenuous, but it was but the words I was able to speak were powerful to completely banish the wolf. So to realize that there's this power within me that maybe like a mustard seed, or that may be very small and seem minor and seem unimportant, that is actually so powerful that it can chase away these giant demons, was, I don't know, maybe that was the most beautiful. Maybe I could say that at this moment, that was the most beautiful experience that I had. But there's many other ones I would say probably are the most beautiful. So
That's so funny. When I met Anubis, I actually thought he was quite friendly because the context is that everyone was confusing me there. It was a very trickstery place. I'm like, why am I here? And I'd ask that probably hundreds of times. And they're like, I don't know. Why are you here? And it'd be so so creepy.
interesting.
And Anubis was the only one who really seemed to actually help me get out of there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
He put me on the scales. He was like, you need to talk to the examiner, and it was still cryptic, but it was this very benevolent energy helping me find my way out of it. a guide in a way that I didn't experience with most of the energies I met there. I think wanted me to stay there possibly indefinitely.
Yeah. Well, it's just as you're speaking of the various, we're both speaking of the various masks. Like you mentioned, the masks of the mother. This is the nature of Anubis. He really is the great initiate. But he's wearing, he came to you as your guide. Within that experience, you're able to experience his other nature, the Hermes that lies behind the mask. So, and we can compare this to Rudolf Steiner's description of the meeting with the guardian of the threshold. If you read chapter 10 of How to Know Higher Worlds, that's a chapter about this experience of the guardian of the threshold. And
anyone who's part of my group, if you become a member of the Patreon, we're thinking about maybe doing a book club on that book. So if anyone who's watching this wants to go over that book collectively, please become a member of the Patreon and join our Discord, and we can discuss about scheduling that. Yeah, please continue.
All right. Yeah, so and I've been back to this chapter many times because it helped me to understand my experience. And so he says some things that are kind of contradictory. And one thing he says is that when we meet the guardian consists of, it's an elemental being, and it consists of all of our all of our karma from past incarnations. So including, the present one. And that he is an expression of that. And so, and only that. So you
like
can,
the moon.
So you can be quite sure that everything that he says, he really knows what he's talking about, right? So we have to, when we cross the threshold, we have to confront the guardian of the threshold. So he comes, and Rudolf Steiner says that he describes him first as a thoroughly horrible being. And then he goes on to, with this dialogue, or it's sort of like a monologue, actually, with the guardian of the threshold speaking to the initiate or would-be initiate and telling him what, guiding him just the way you described that, Anubis was for you. So there's this dual aspect, again, there's this dual aspect. There's this facade of evil and of confrontation, and of accusation. And then behind this, there's really another being, because Anubis is really only a mask. You see it on that pictures of Hermes with his mask that comes down, and the nose of Anubis sticks out. So really behind Anubis is this great wisdom, and we can really count on having the kind of guidance you're talking about in confronting these things when they come up for us.
For me, he was a maybe 38-year-old or 35-year-old black, bald-headed man with a Middle Eastern accent, which was amazing because I watched a show where Anubis was in the show. That's exactly how they depicted him, and I hadn't seen that until after my initiation. So I guess that's in the collective unconscious, is that he was like that when he's taking on human form or something. It reminded me of an Egyptian. Also, the words of Thoth came to me, and that is what I attribute to why I was able to leave the underworld. Was do not travel in angles, but curves to escape the hounds is one of the things that led me out of there. is starting to move into, because what was written on the wall of the underworld, and I had two confirmations of two other people who'd been initiated. They saw V, U, and V. It could be a regional spiritual realm place, but it was speaking of the masculine and feminine. And the first thing they said to me when I started to descend was, "We're the one," or you need to be rounded out. So as there's this speaking of, what do you feel that traveling in curves rather than angles, what do you feel that this means? Why did this help me exit the underworld? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh, that's fascinating. Everything when you all the things you mention about your experience are really fascinating because I can see what, or at least begin to see what is behind those things. So, and as you were speaking about the roundness and the angles, a thought occurred to me, and but then it passed when you spoke further. But let's see if I can grab it. Well, I think it must have to do with the masculine and the feminine. And I think you mentioned that. We really are living in a culture that is highly angular, and yeah, I suppose I could point to a very conscious diversion from that in the architecture of Rudolf Steiner. If you look at the famous building that he designed, the Goetheanum in Dornach, Switzerland, it doesn't have angles and corners. He's cut off all the corners of all the windows and doorways and that sort of thing. I mean, people, you can theorize why that is. There's a certain aesthetic, but I do feel that we lose. There's a kind of warmth, or the divine feminine has an embracing quality. It's there's an embracing that comes with the feminine, and it helps us to integrate and to integrate our parts, and not to be so fragmented. And if you look at angles, I mean, that's fragmentation, and angles are they describe something that we experience in a masculine culture such as what we have. I see you're ready to say something. Go for it.
I feel a fire. What I find more dangerous than speaking of the spirit realm is, in fact, all of the the numerous inundations of the archonic frustrations of taxes, and we need to mow the lawn, and we need to put chemicals in it, and we need to put children through a creativity siphoning machine called the education system, and we need to follow the pop stars and mindlessly scroll through advertising. And I think this endless dulling of the mind through the repetition of meaningless, tedious, frustrating details akin to the communist, oh, let's go to the place where they have bread and go 50 minutes away to where they have milk, spending your whole day on the tediousness of the mechanical, industrialized mechanization of the human being. I think this is, in fact, the danger of the extraction of the human soul. I think this is the Ahrimanic part of the setting of Ahriman's incarnation. I think this is the danger that is, in fact, the most terrifying, is this mundane, archonic assault upon the soul. And you can see this in the architecture. You can see the dulling of the architecture. You can see the dulling of the way things look. You can see the gentleman's club next to the Turner Burn sign, everything paved over, nature paved over to make convenience. I think these are the the real fires of hell that wish to consume the human soul and the spirit. And I think this is the real devil. It's not sitting in some occult book somewhere. It's right in front of your eyes. I think the real black magic, you can just look to the medical industry for 2 seconds, and if you saw in the spirit realm, you could see the
And
devil is incarnating there.
And the advertising industry. I mean, I look at the advertising industry. What artistry has gone into persuasion, in the advertising industry. It's just, there's untold billions of dollars are spent trying to get you to buy something and to believe that it's going to help you in life. It's going to make you happy, So you're right, you're right. I have another response to your question about angles and curves. And I have, for many years now, had a collection, I'll say, of stones, and it's I actually only have one stone that's very angular, and it's about large like this, and it has lots of different angles on it, and obviously not something that recently got broken off or anything like that, but over long periods of time, it has an ancient feel to it, but it's very angular. And then I have these lovely round stones that are like eggs, almost like perfect eggs, and they're from the coast of Maine, where stones are in the ocean, and they roll back and forth with the tides, and the ground, if you've ever been there, Mount Desert Island, I think, is the place where you find them. The bottom, the ground under the sea there is rock, and so it's not sand. I mean, there's bits of sand here and there, but essentially it's like bedrock, and and it's these baths. It's all curved and smoothed out, and there's all these different like impressions, and baths where these stones sit inside of these, and they just roll continually, back and forth with the tide. So you can see how these stones have been over, millennia, been shaped. So I have these stones, and I like to think of the contrast between these different types of stones. And when I was younger, I had sort of an obsession with finding round stones. I would go to the beach, and I would spend hours looking for these beautifully rounded stones that occur on the beach, and that you don't see anywhere else generally. I mean, unless it's been in water at some point, it's not going to be a round stone. Everything's angular. So I actually got to thinking about that, and I ended up writing an article about it. It was called Confessions of a Compulsive Stone Collector. And anyway, the point was, I really saw in these round stones an analog for life, and for what life does to us, and what the flow of life and the pulse of life does for us, and how it makes us round. How we start out being, because all of those round stones started out being jagged, and eventually they become round, and how much nicer it is and friendlier it is to hold a round stone than a jagged stone. I could go on and on about it, but I won't. I'll leave it at that.
And I want to leave everyone with every one of your enemies, spirit realm, physical. Every time they jab you, you have an opportunity to become free as you release them and lose that edge that they have pierced you with.
Yeah, perfect. Beautiful.
So, on that note, please guys, if you wanted to check out Bill, how can they find your work?
Well, if you have my name up for people, if you use my name and if you go to academia.edu, you'll find some 30 odd articles there on spiritual topics, such as we're speaking of. Generally, in the anthroposophical vein. Yeah, so that's what I'd recommend.
So go check out Bill's work, and thanks everyone who's part of Lugal's world. Please like, please subscribe. We want to hear your comments on initiation, your initiation, any thoughts you have on what Bill or I have said. I would also like to encourage you to become a member of our Patreon. Not only if you get above the first membership, you get access to the community, but you get access to working with me and the other reader to spiritually develop you, whether through readings, guidance, as well as a full community that you can connect to and fight some of the isolation that's happening with technology. Let's build a more spiritualized and awakened and conscious world together. Everyone have a peaceful and magical evening. May all of this be for the diminishing of your suffering and the increase of your joy. Aho and amen.
Thank you, Lugal.
Welcome.